Wonderful. Thank you so much, Angie, and good morning and welcome to the annual Soul of the Next Economy Forum. And thank you all for joining us in our breakout session towards a reskilling revolution, avoiding obsolescence and building resilience. My name is Jason Ribeiro. I serve as the Director of Strategy at Calgary Economic Development, and I'm the outgoing curator of Global Shapers Calgary. It's an initiative of the World Economic Forum aimed at driving dialogue, action, and change in the Calgary community. I will be your host and panel moderator for the next 45 to 50 minutes. As always, I want to begin this session by acknowledging the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation and the Stoney Nakoda First Nations. The city of Calgary is home to all of us who live, work, and play in Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy days to join us, and we hope the information and insights presented not only level set on some of the inner workings of reskilling and how resilience is needed to meet the demands of the future of work, but also prove useful to you in your work and business, in your work at home, and most importantly, as is become part and parcel of Soul of the Next Economy in community. Before we get further into our session, I'd like to invite you to join the conversation on social media using the hashtag SoulForumYYC, hashtag SoulForumYYC, and share any questions, insights, and learnings with your fellow Calgarians online. Please feel free to use the chat function as well to make comments or post questions. I'm sure that all of us on the panel will be keen to address them during today's event or even offline. The description of today's event began with a quote: "Today's skills will not match the jobs of tomorrow, and newly acquired skills may quickly become obsolete." We've heard these words before from countless international bodies and expert panels. So why does it feel like we have yet to fully understand the implications of those statements for our cities and its companies? Yes, the future of work is in part about the increased use of automation and artificial intelligence, but it is equally about the necessity for continuous learning and flexible work, as was so eloquently stated in this morning's keynote by my colleague, Janet Lane. We need to formally acknowledge the former and quickly embrace the latter, that this is indeed an opportunity. Amidst the ongoing change structurally in our energy sector, accelerating digitization across industries, and nation-leading high unemployment rates, it is clear that the future of work has to be now. We believe we must have a reskilling revolution, and as one of the authors of the report that Janet mentioned in her keynote, we must transition into becoming a learning city. Today's session will begin with a presentation that explores how organizations can embrace opportunities posed by the future of work and build greater operational and individual resilience for employees. We will begin by sharing findings from Calgary's most comprehensive study on the future of work that took place this past summer and outline practical strategies for both employers and employees. Immediately following that presentation, we will transition into two very real case studies of where reskilling has been deployed in corporate contexts and the challenges and opportunities posed by doing so. We have an incredible panel to close the session featuring leaders from PwC Canada, Skyhive, and Service Credit Union today. But I will begin by introducing my colleague and friend, Umair Pervez. Umair is a management consultant, a former curator in his own right of Global Shapers Calgary, and a future of work expert. His expertise in the future of work stems from an interest in technology, psychology, and business, and he was a recipient of Avenue Magazine's prestigious Top 40 Under 40 distinction in 2019. Please welcome my friend Umair Pervez.
Thank you so much, Jason. And so today I'm going to talk to you about building resilience, but we can't have that conversation without diving into the starting point. And I'm going to talk to you quickly about the fourth industrial revolution. It's a term coined by the World Economic Forum, an organization that we're affiliated with as Global Shapers. And so this is a bunch of technologies that have had a huge impact on the way we work. And so these technologies, which are internet-based technologies, you can see some of these on the left-hand side of your screen, have had a much higher impact than previous technologies that have come before them. So artificial intelligence, robotics, cloud computing, autonomous vehicles, Internet of Things. It's said that these technologies are going to impact half of all Canadian jobs over the next 10 years. And so they have a huge impact, but the interesting thing is that the pace of their change and the pace of their adoption is inherently faster than other technologies. And as you can see on the right-hand side of your screen, that impact and that disruption has caused a lot of changes, not just in the nature of work, but in entire industries. So you can see this graph of the average life expectancy of S&P 500 organizations. And it's anticipated to decrease to 14 years by the year 2026. And it was 33 years in 1965. So you can see that that graph is trending downwards. A lot of disruption happening, a lot of change being brought about. And all of these changes require new skills, right? So before we talk about reskilling, I just want to dispel a couple of myths about automation and its impact on reskilling. Typically, when I tell you that automation is being introduced, on the left-hand side of your screen, you can see an example of McDonald's kiosks. Your natural instinct is to think human jobs are being replaced. It's not actually true. That may be the common sense opinion. But if you look at the kiosks in McDonald's as an example, you'll actually understand that this actually increased their capacity to take orders. And they had to hire more people in the kitchens to be able to take their orders. So it actually increased the number of human beings who are working in their jobs. And another thing is that they had to hire technicians for the kiosk and people who stood there, customer service individuals who guided people through the kiosk process. So new skill sets were being created. Similarly with drones, you may think that pilots are being replaced and now there's a computer that runs the drone and conducts its entire operations. There were hundreds of jobs that were created to operate drones, and it was an entirely new skill set. Okay, so we've understood that new skill sets are being created by these technologies, and that's why reskilling is important. So how does it happen in practice? Well, there's three main ways that you can see reskilling take place, and one of them is self-directed learning. So you understand that there's a need to learn a new skill for your job or for a future job. You go out and obtain that skill. You fund it yourself. You can use a variety of different methods to obtain that skill. The second thing is we looked at educational institutions, right? And it's very valuable if they embed those skills needed by organizations into their curriculum or create short courses that are available on demand, right? And then lastly, we're looking at corporate training. So these are in-house L&D departments that can anticipate changes in the external environment, create courses in a very short period of time, upskill, reskill their employees, and then implement that training. But when I say this is easier said than done. And each one of these modes of training or reskilling has its challenges. When you talk about self-directed learning, a lot of people say, we should be trending towards lifelong learning. That's easier said than done. It's not easy to get people to understand this concept and then be motivated enough to pursue it. When you talk about corporate training, for example, not every corporation has the in-house expertise to be able to develop this training and make sure that it is well developed, understood by employees, and then applied practically. So what are the specific issues we're dealing with in the Calgary context when it comes to reskilling? Now, Calgary has a lot going for it. We've got great educational institutions, higher educational institutions. We've got a young workforce. We have the impetus for change. We have conditions for change. But hand in hand with that comes some problems. We've got a dominant oil and gas industry, which provides a lot of resistance to change. We have people focused on trying to make the status quo work instead of looking to the future. And what doesn't help is we don't have a history of good innovation. We don't actually appear on any innovation rankings. So I want to now talk to you about some research that we did as Global Shapers. So we designed some of the most in-depth research, which I'm about to present to you. We conducted research on the future of work post-COVID. And so here are some of the interesting insights that we found. We spoke about automation increasing the need for reskilling. And we found out that 22% of Calgarians have reported that ever since COVID struck, our rate of automation has increased. Interestingly, what you'll see on the left-hand side of the screen is that hospitality and retail saw the least automation. So it suggests the importance, really realizing the importance of the human interaction, the human element. So less automation over there, but roles involving data processing and analysis saw the most use of automation or augmentation. So this kind of gives us a hint that some of the low skill labor jobs are not the ones that are really going through automation or augmentation at this point. And if we move forward, we'll see some other interesting insights. And I really want you to think about this as we continue the rest of this breakout session. 54% of Calgarians don't think they need to learn a new skill for a post-pandemic job market. And a whole bunch of them don't actually know whether they should or not. These are really alarming figures. We have these conversations about reskilling in our close circles, but does the average Calgarian realize that they need to go out and reskill and upskill? 48% of Calgarians feel like their employers don't offer the training they need. And is it any surprise that oil and gas had the lowest numbers within this category? We had hospitality, retail, and arts at the top of that list. So what we found in our survey is that there is a significant need for us to create an awareness of the fact that reskilling is needed, not just in certain organizations and certain industries, but also amongst individuals. And we found out that there's some quick wins. There are some quick wins in that some organizations have training, but they've not communicated this to their employees. So something for us to think about. There are challenges, but there's also opportunities presented to us. Jason?
Thank you so much, Umair. And I'll close by saying, the findings of this survey, which, were deployed to over 800 Calgarians during COVID, taught us a few things. Certainly, as you saw in Janet's keynote, this is a mindset shift. This is about adaptability. And while we have become accustomed to Calgary to the volatility of the oil patch, while we have become accustomed to dealing with crises, whether they be natural in nature or in relation to our business climate here, we have to build the adaptive skills and adaptive capacity to really get our heads around what the future of work is going to be and where reskilling plugs into that. The thing that gives, I think, both Umair and I a good deal of hope from these findings is that we have a pattern of resilience, not just a pattern of getting used to volatility, but a pattern of resilience and adaptivity in the most dire of circumstances. Right now, we're starting to see a sort of turning point where those that are underemployed in the energy sector are finally taking that leap to start to look at new avenues for employment, largely within digital roles. We've seen how this community can band together in times of peril, whether that is from Snowmageddon on the left to the floods of 2013 in the middle there. So all of that, I think, in combination provides hope for avoiding obsolescence and building resilience, but it requires intention. And so hopefully this provides you a foundation to pursue that level of resilience in your organizations, as a student, potentially yourself, in committing yourself to further advanced training, experiential or credit and degree. But lastly, how we as a community can come together. So thank you, Umair, for that presentation. I'd like to now transition into those particular cases that we discussed about how corporates in our community or across Canada and the world are starting to adopt reskilling. So I'm going to welcome Treena Richards from Service Credit Union. She is their Manager of Learning and Development and works extensively in the areas of workforce planning and employee development. She'll be discussing Service's approach to their changing workforce and how she and her team support both employees and the organization in these times of transition. Welcome, Treena.
Thank you, Jason. Good morning. Thank you so much for allowing me to participate in this conversation with you, gentlemen, this morning. I think it's a really, really important conversation to be having, given the workplace that we see today, the changes that we're seeing in all of our industries. I'm in financial services, there's oil and gas. It is not exclusive to any one industry. We are all seeing disruption and transformation occurring. And then you throw COVID on top of all of that, and it is a recipe for change out here. So I'm really excited to have an opportunity to have this conversation with you guys this morning. As Jason said, I'm the manager of learning and development with Service Credit Union. I've been in this work of talent development for about 15 years. After starting my career as a banker, this job is way more exciting than that. So yeah, it allows me to really explore my passions around figuring out what's changing, what's coming, and how to make sure that we have the right people in the right place with the right skills to succeed. So that's been very cool for me. I just wanted, for those of you who aren't familiar with Service Credit Union, I recognize that we don't have a tremendously large footprint in Calgary. I'll just give you a bit of a summary of who we are, and then I'll get into a bit of how we've been anticipating and working towards this reskilling revolution. I love that language that you guys have introduced, so I think I'm going to steal it from here. So Service Credit Union, we're the fourth largest credit union in Canada, largest in Alberta. We employ about 2,100 Albertans. And have over $16.5 billion in assets. We are what we call a purpose-driven organization. We have a noble purpose of shaping members' financial fitness. And this noble purpose is our reason for existing, and as such drives all of our business decisions. We also live 7 corporate values, and they work to define our organizational culture, along with obviously a number of other things. One of these corporate values is investing in our people. So this one in particular speaks directly to the work we've been doing to reskill and upskill a number of our employees. The second part of our culture that speaks directly to this work that we've been doing is that in 2008, we underwent a really large merger that brought together 3 large credit unions across the province. And at that point, our board and executive leadership team made a strong commitment to absolutely no employee layoffs. So that meant that we would only reduce our workforce through voluntary terminations and attrition. So that's fantastic. It's great to work for an organization that is strong enough and successful enough to be able to make that commitment. But it also prevents some challenges in that we know that there's positions that are through digital transformation, through e-commerce, and all of those things, they're going to be eliminated. And so what do we do with those employees? We also know that there's jobs that are going to be created through that. As Umair pointed out, automation doesn't necessarily mean a reduction in workforce, but it does mean that you have different skills that you need those same people to have. And with a commitment to our employees that we have, how the conundrum for me and my team is how do I pair those two things up? How do I reconcile that? So the question for me and my team continues to be, how do we first predict what the new skills are that are going to be required? And second of all, how do we develop them in the people who are going to be displaced? So we've been working on that for a while. And then in the midst of working and solving that riddle, we were hit with the global pandemic that I assume most of you were hit with as well. And it really changed the economic reality of our world, our province, our communities, and of course, our organizations. So I feel lucky to work for the organization that I do, because not only does it have this culture that is committed to investing in our people, so that we can continue to shape members' financial fitness throughout these turbulent times. It's been really challenging, obviously, for our membership, the people who do business with us. So we've had to increase our ability to help shape their financial fitness even more during this time. But I also feel lucky because we're also a very well-capitalized organization. We're successful. We have built up enough capital that we know we can sustain these times, and we can also sustain it while not cutting things like development, even in the short term. And we know that in a lot of organizations, that is one of the first things to get cut during this time. So in fact, in my organization, it's been just the opposite. We have been redoubling our efforts to support our employees with training. We pivoted very quickly to support them with a bunch of new skills that we needed, like remote working, remote leadership, building mental strength and agility, and leading through some of these mentally challenging times and dealing with mental health. We had a very non-remote workforce prior to March 15th. And within 2 weeks, we had about 80% of our workforce deployed to working from home. And so it was very quick that we needed to skill up our employees. So we also have an unwavering belief in our organization that if we continue to invest in the development of our employees, it will have a direct positive impact on the revenue of the organization. That is often difficult to fully quantify, but it is never questioned. So again, I feel lucky about that. I know there's lots of organizations that that need that tangible proof, which is difficult. It's hard to draw that direct correlation sometimes. So it's good. So as many of you here have, we've seen this transformation in the way we do our business coming for a few years. And we've started to build out workforce planning structure that identifies the roles that will likely be automated and the skills of the individuals in those roles currently. And we also did a ton of research in the digital skills that we believe will be required for the space we're already in and expanding at a rapid pace. Which I was very happy to hear, to watch Janet's presentation this morning and see slides that came up that echoed a lot of this stuff. So I feel like I'm on the right track with our organization. So we know that there's going to be a ton of new technical skills, as I've listed here. Everything from use, monitoring, control, design, programming, user experience, all of that kind of stuff. And then system analysis and evaluation. And then this world of data that is expanding exponentially for all of us. Data management, governance, security, analytics. We are all relying more on data to make our decisions than we ever have. So that is another area that is growing exponentially in our industry. But then we also identified that there's a host of personal and self-management skills. We used to call them soft skills, but I actually think they're very hard, so I don't like to call them that. But we also know that they're growing in importance. We believe that they are going to increase in demand because these are the areas in which the bots. So if you're looking for a way to future-proof yourself against automation and some of that AI and all of that that's coming, grow your skills in areas like resilience, stress tolerance, learning agility, complex problem solving, innovation, creativity, leadership, social influence, service orientation, all of those things. Those will help you become very, very important in the days and years to come. So to start building those skills quickly, we partnered with a large online course supplier who can offer on-demand training for all of those skills, everything from the technical through to the self-management. And we're in the process of integrating that with our own internal LMS. Yeah, we will be able to very soon, within the next couple of weeks, offer over 10,000 on-demand courses through our own internal LMS. So employees can own that piece of their own career. So our workforce has somewhat stabilized for now. We're all working remotely. Things have kind of gotten back to normal, but we know that the next disruption is just around the corner. So we need to stay on top of it. We are internally on the cusp of piloting some bots to start shadowing the work of some of our administration teams to build the intelligence required for them to take over that work. So the role of my team now is to reskill those employees so that they are ready to be deployed. One of our challenges there is that many of the emerging jobs are in technology, as we've talked about a lot. And there's sometimes the disconnect between what those people that are being displaced are good at and want to do, are interested in doing, and what's coming out. So I also just wanted to highlight that it's not all technology, although even the ones that are non-technology based, they're technology adjacent, if you will. None of us can avoid technology anymore, if you were holding out for that. stop. It's not possible. Even those of us in people and culture or HR, we got to get better at technology. It drives our decisions. So, but jobs like people and culture, marketing, sales, product development, those are also big, important, growing areas of our business. So I still think there's roles for everybody, assuming that they want to adapt and to learn the new skills. So thank you very much. I hope I have stayed on time. Gentlemen, I'll throw it back to you, Jason.
Thank you so much, Treena. And I think, from the perspective of being in the realm of economic development, to hear that there are companies within our province that are, putting people first, I think is an incredibly, incredibly compelling example we need to hear more of. So thank you for sharing that with us. Just want to go to the Q&A. Dante had a sort of comment around 22% in increased automation being extremely low. And I think it's an important point to make that increase in automation was really in the direct response to COVID, but not necessarily overall pre-COVID. As CED has documented, we've forecasted in Alberta between now and 2022, literally $18.4 billion of digital spending across all industries. And so the increase in automation might just be from increasing automation trends generally within that industry or within communities. So I think it's an important distinction to make and an important point you raised. I'd like to transition very quickly now to someone who's literally in the business of helping people reskill through an enterprise platform called Skyhive. Sean Hinton is the founder and CEO of Skyhive, as well as the co-chair of the Entrepreneur Circle of the Canadian American Business Council. With a career spanning 2 decades, Sean is experienced as a corporate CEO and an expert in labor economics and global business. Prior to founding Skyhive, Sean was a CEO of a $250 million global company with 500 employees and 23 global offices. So thanks for being here, Sean. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, and good morning. So as Jason mentioned, I'm founder and CEO of a company called Skyhive, and we're based in Vancouver, but we have a presence in Silicon Valley. We operate on 4 continents. We have digitized the methodology called quantum labor analysis, which is the application of artificial intelligence to analyze a workforce at its most granular level. Basically, what this means is we have automated the process of helping people, companies, and communities, first of all, understand their skills, technical skills, soft skills, tools, technologies, methodologies. Then we bring in the world's labor market data in terms of supply and demand movements. So we are streaming in real time tens of millions of data points with respect to how the labor market is changing. And so we're able to capture in real time the changes happening down to location level, job level, occupational level, or obviously an industry level. And then we use our technology to support rapid reskilling of companies and communities. And so we work with mainly Fortune 500, Global 2000 organizations across 4 continents. We're vertically agnostic, and so we support reskilling in aerospace and defense, oil and gas, chemical, manufacturing, retail, education, et cetera, as well as working with governments. We work with the Department of National Defense. We work with innovation in terms of supporting national occupational classification development for the new roles emerging in cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and quantum computing. And so we're able to see in real time what's happening with the shifts and changes in skills all the way down to an individual level within an organization. And so I wanted to leave you with a case study of a complex case that we dealt with. Obicon Investment Group is a large manufacturing organization in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, as a labor market, is obviously experiencing very interesting shifts currently. So not only are they dealing with COVID, they're dealing with major socioeconomic changes with respect to opening up the country and becoming more progressive. They're moving away from traditional, resource and oil and gas based economy into renewable energy and sustainable energy. And so Obicon sits at the middle of this with 16 subsidiaries. We were able to provide our technology into an environment where less than 60% of the workforce actually had access to a computer, and provide a community computer for frontline workers to be able to go and use SkyHive technology and ascertain their skills very rapidly. Within 6 to 8 minutes, they're able to see their full skill set. And then they're able to see how their skill set, their skill DNA, as we call it, applies to all the jobs available within Obicon Investment Group as an organization, as well as Saudi Arabia as a community. And so we work a lot with organizations right now that are looking at large collections of displaced workers that are having to move, say, from traditional hospitality jobs, as hospitality has been decimated, into more digital customer experience type roles over the last 2 quarters. With respect to the application of the technology with Obicon Group, we, within 10 days, were able to help the skill discovery of 4,000 workers. And help drive efficiency for Obicon, both in terms of talent acquisition and reskilling within their own internal company. And so something that would have taken them, a role that would have taken them, say, 5 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks to fill, was taking less now is taking less than 5 days. And the idea here is about applying advanced technologies to driving more efficiency. But I think what's more important, SkyHive is a B corporation. We're a for-profit social impact organization. We're a living wage employer. We're also a strong public proponent on the ethical use of artificial intelligence. So you can imagine that we're using AI to combat the impacts that AI is having on the workforce with respect to displaced workers as a result of automation. And so we work with underrepresented groups in the labor market. We define underrepresented as having a higher than average unemployment rate. So in Canada, this would be women, youth, newcomers, physically disabled, veterans, and of course, Indigenous communities. And we're applying our technology, and happy to take this offline or in the Q&A, to all sorts of use cases that are now looking at how do we harness the unique skill DNA that each of us has acquired from our work experience, life experience, and educational experience to the changing nature of work and desired career pathways as the future of work accelerates. So thank you, Jason, and I'm happy to provide any additional details in the Q&A.
Thanks so much, Sean. And I think that you know, what folks should take away is as we talk about technology, as we talk about artificial intelligence, they're almost all the time is a presumption of it being a little bit of a black box and not being seen as an enabler for better diversity, better inclusion. And I think it's an important statement that SkyHive, as a certified B Corp, is setting a standard for its own work as it helps other companies navigate theirs. So I think, again, both within the Service Credit Union example and SkyHive, we have really, really fantastic examples of walking the talk here that I certainly am going to take away. So I'll transition very quickly right now into bringing in Umair, Treena, and Sean for a little bit of a discussion and Q&A. And I'll just stop sharing right now for a moment. But in the interim here, there we go. Perfect. I'll begin with a general question that can go to any of you. One of the aims of the Soul of the Next Economy Forum is to find sustainable, business-oriented solutions to the challenges we face. Clearly, through the presentations our attendees have heard today, we can agree that the need for reskilling and upskilling is real, and it's now. But it's fair to say that much of the work related to this kind of training is still rather piecemeal, or only coming to the forefront as a result of COVID or something like a downturn in a particular sector. Sean, you mentioned, how a number of these companies are trying to, change their capital makeup by divesting potentially from resource or commodity-driven economic models. So My question to each of you, just at a high level, is how do we ensure that the reskilling revolution we're barreling towards is a sustainable one? And maybe I'll start with you, Umair.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. So I think this is something that we deal with as management consultants on a daily basis. So we work with large organizations who are going through some sort of complex change, and it's our job to really convince them that they need to reskill, they need to upskill their workforce to be able to deal with the consequences of whatever's coming their way in the future. And really what it all boils down to is making a business case for return on investment that they get from that training, but also showing them what the future looks like. So if you create a vivid picture for leadership about what the future holds for that particular industry, what technologies are coming, what disruptions are expected, I think that makes a solid business case for them to make the investments within their L&D departments, or make the right connections with educational institutions, or inculcate a culture of lifelong learning within their employees. So I think to summarize, we have to create that vivid picture of what the future looks like, create a business case, and create a need for action. And then these organizations need to create policies and culture around those.
That's a great point, Sean. If this was being done in a very, very systemic, holistic fashion, there might not be as much of a need for Skyhive's offerings. And you're dealing with this, really at an enterprise level. How do you view the sort of reskilling revolution, not just being this kind of stop and start, disaggregated collection of retraining and reskilling experiences? How do you view this really coming together as part of something holistic? And what is perhaps Skyhive's leading position in trying to make that a reality?
Yeah, so a few weeks ago, the Unilever and Walmart announced a partnership with the World Economic Forum, where we have joined Accenture to support an examination of complete reskilling of the consumer goods industry worldwide. And yesterday, as part of the opening plenary, Julie Sweet, the CEO of Accenture, at the World Economic Forum Pioneers of Change Summit, talked about this need to harness the focus on digital transformation with what we call responsible skilling, or people-centric digital transformation. And so I think I've often used the term that, prior to COVID, the future of work was a slight drip out of the faucet, and in a post-COVID world, the fire hose is now open. So I think for the majority of organizations, they have recognized that the future is here, and they need better visibility and rapidly into that future. But making sure that the large organizations like the Walmarts and Unilevers that are leading the way are applying a people-centric approach to how they're developing their own workforces for the future of work. And the more that we see this, and the more that this is supported by the world economy, this is where we're going to see a cohesiveness in terms of everybody rowing in the same direction. Because ultimately, with the exception of this can be argued, but in terms of the exception of climate change, the future of work is one of the most important issues facing humanity, at least for the next decade.
Well stated. Treena, on that end, we've talked about, fairly large employers being able to lead the way. And you even mentioned in your response that service happens to be well capitalized, so it's able to make some of these commitments, like avoiding layoffs and directly investing in the success of your people. When a company or an organization might be smaller size, mid-size, and they're not potentially as well capitalized as you are, certainly I think that these bigger companies leading the way is going to be helpful. But what are other ways organizational leaders can ensure current and prospective employees have access to the training and skill development that they may need?
Yeah, that it's a really great question, because I do know that I'm lucky to work for the organization that I work for and have that benefit. Having said that, though, I think it's important to recognize that training and development doesn't happen solely from courses. in a classroom, a virtual classroom, an online course. We actually use a model of learning that's called the 70-20-10 model. And so we know that only about 10% of what you learn, the knowledge and skills that you acquire to do your job, is learned through formal learning. You need something foundational to get you there. But then the majority, the other 80%, 20% of it comes from social interactions with other people, and then the 70% is actually doing the work on the job and getting feedback. So if in your organization you don't have the funds or the capital right now to spend on training, I encourage you to still go and try and create opportunities in that 70 and 20 space. Create coaching, formalize a coaching program, formalize mentoring within your organization. You likely have a ton of knowledge and skill in your organization that you could use, and then give people opportunities to work on projects or stretch assignments. And when they're acknowledged in that way, they will rise.
Well said. I know we're barreling towards the end here, but I want to sneak in a couple questions before you guys go on break. Sean, during COVID, we talked about, this reckoning of accelerated change caused by technological advancements and some of the macro level efforts that have been established to deal with that. But the West is also dealing with the reckoning on important issues of gender equality, race, diversity, and inclusion at the same time. And oftentimes I feel like, some of the conversations about inclusivity are not overlapping with technology or data for good, if you will, as much as they should. And I know you're on the front lines of that. Could you walk us through how technology and data analytics in the SkyHive context can be a bit of a co-conspirator in the fight for greater inclusion here?
Yeah, it's a really great and complex question. In order for us to use data for good, as it relates to inclusivity and diversity, we need to have an element of transparency in that data. And in the absence of regulations around the monitoring and evaluation of artificial intelligence modeling as it relates to making people decisions, and let me maybe simplify what I've just said. So when using a technology that's recommending something for a person, we don't have strong regulations yet. We do have that in fintech. We do have that in cybersecurity, but we don't have that with people technologies. And so one of the things that I'm a strong advocate for is for us to apply the same rigor and regulation in AI modeling as it relates to people technologies as we have in financial technologies and cybersecurity technologies. When we can do that, people and organizations will be more free to know that they are using a trusted source of data where we can then begin to examine demographic information that can lead us to new findings that I guarantee you haven't been seen before in terms of looking at, for example, we did some location-based labor market analysis on low-income communities versus sort of middle and higher income communities. These are all the types of things that are available to us with big data. It's just that there's a certain protectionism that exists today, and that is rightly so because we're dealing with people's private information. However, we do need to move to a model of regulation so we can begin to use this information to support policymakers and society at large in driving change.
Yeah, and I think that will provide a fair amount of predictability, at least, about what this is and what it isn't, and how we can collectively, frame a playground that is equitable, that is fair for how we are able to access this data. So thank you for that. We're at time, so 30 seconds, Umair. This is the lightning round. When it comes to reskilling a workforce, what is the top #1 challenge that you would identify, and what is the top #1 opportunity that you think COVID has introduced in relation to the future of work?
Well, I think the #1 challenge is that we've had so many people displaced from their jobs because certain industries have collapsed. We can take the airline industry, for example. And just having said that, I'll say that the opportunity lies within that, right? So you can look at Scandinavian Airlines, for example. So they immediately found how they could retrain their employees, reskill them, and redeploy them to the healthcare sector. So I think that the challenge is that we have a lot of people out of work, and the opportunity is to find the exact place for them to reskill and to redeploy.
The work ahead, wholly achievable. Thank you. That concludes our Q&A session. Thank you, Umair, Treena, and Sean, for not only participating today, but for your commitment to leading our province and country and city through this period of transition as far as learning and data is concerned. And that while I'm saying that, I'll close by highlighting that this is indeed tough work. It begs, I think, a number of collective, or at least a collective attention dedicated to making sure we come out on the other side building back better, making sure that we view this as an opportunity to take care of people. There are reskilling examples that are done good, recent reskilling examples that have done poorly. I think we have the opportunity to take advantage of all that has come before us, work out the kinks, put our shoulder to the wheel, and make good on this opportunity for our community and its workers. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful rest of the forum. And please reach out to any of our speakers or myself on LinkedIn if you have any questions. And thank you for your participation. Take care.